are listening to the War Rapport.
Well, let's go ahead and get to it. B, pull up our offense versus their defense. Now, you did a breakdown. You did a breakdown where you talked specifically about their defensive line. They were actually in a 4-man front last week.
Correct. Which is what is represented here is the 4-man front that they had last week.
So we're assuming that that's what they'll look like. I mean, they could be saving some stuff for us. Who knows?
They could be. So the reason why I think that this will be the way that they line up against us is just because I think that in their minds, they're going to need to be committed to stopping the run, right? So when they went out and did the 3-3-5, they did that against Alabama and Samford, the 2 games that I watched last year, both teams who throw the ball a lot, right? Like Bama was running all over them last year with Brian Robinson Bama with a okay offensive line had no trouble running the ball on Mercer last year, none. But they did come out there with a 3-man front, and they tried to cheat a lot of people up in that to stop the run, but they did have the 3-man front down there. Samford runs a hurry-up style of offense, a lot of quick passing, like it was kind of air raid style offense that Samford was running. So they were in the 3-3-5 against him as well, but they were doing more cloud coverage on the back end, right? So I expect them to need to put the 4-down linemen up there against us to try to stop us from running the ball. And it's just going to be interesting. The interesting thing for this one is going to be, for me, how well Tate Johnson is able to understand what kind of blitz pickups are going to be coming at him, because I expect them to send 5-6 often to try to disrupt what we're doing offensively.
You pointed out that there was a lot of different looks they were giving in terms of DBs playing they like to play 3 deep. And that kind of gave the opponent opportunities to throw underneath or throw quick passes to their receivers.
Yep.
What are you expecting out of TJ Finley in this game, assuming that that's Mercer's plan this weekend? What are you expecting to see pre-snap, and how he reacts after the snap?
So what I'm hoping happens is that he recognizes how much cushion they're giving the slot receiver, and he audibles into something to be able to just, look, man, take the profit. Don't worry about trying to hit the home run. Make them cheat up on it, right? And make them adjust to having to play bump and run coverage on the outside, or something that covers up those deficiencies and having all of that space out there. Doing some sort of robbing, something like that. They're going to have to do that. But if TJ is able to recognize that, I think that's a losing strategy for Mercer, because that's actually in TJ's wheelhouse. That's where he does his best stuff, is that short and intermediate throwing stuff. So if you're going to let TJ nickel and dime you down the field, they're going to get destroyed. That's TJ does that the absolute best. You have to take the airspace away from his receivers, make them win routes, and make him throw in the tight windows. If you don't do that, he is going to actually pick you apart, because again, that's what he does the absolute best, is being able to throw those short and intermediate routes, because that doesn't give the defense enough time to get pressure on him, and it's going to be the stuff that he's most accurate on. You need to make him have to throw over the top of the defense.
Mike G, you have talked a lot about this offensive line. You have had some concerns, obviously, with this O-line coming into the season. Of course, the news came out beginning of this week that Nick Brahms his career is done, which means Tate Johnson is indeed the guy moving forward. Your thoughts of what are you expecting to see this weekend with this O-line, if anything?
Well, I'm definitely going to be watching Tate Johnson. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I think it's important to remember that Brahms has been out almost all of the offseason. So Tate Johnson has been taking every snap in these player-led workouts. Like, he's not some newcomer to center. Right. They've been planning on this for a while. They were hopeful that Brahms would make a comeback. I think he gave it a shot. It didn't work. Now it's the Tate Johnson era at center. It's going to be really important for TJ Finley and Tate Johnson to be on the same page in terms of snap counts and, directing protections and things of that nature along that offensive line. What we're looking at here, I'll be interested to see how much of this we actually do, and if they don't send 12 personnel out there. So if you don't know what that is, that means Dawson comes off the field and we put a second tight end in there, and then run Malcolm Johnson and Shedrick Jackson on the outsides. So I expect Tank Bigsby to be featured heavily. What we're going to be watching here with the offensive line is pushing the run game. That's where they failed big time last year. So can you move a smaller, weaker Mercer defensive line off the ball and give your running backs room to wreak havoc? If they can keep the ball out of the air for the most part in this game, I think they're going to want to do it. And use your all-world running backs, man. Use Tank Bigsby and use Jarquez Hunter to really get after it. Find those gaps and see what those guys have early. So, but again, if they do that, I do expect to see a little bit more 12 personnel in this game. Malcolm Johnson Jr., obviously, I'm going to have an eye on him. I think we know what Shedrick Jackson is over there at the X, but they're starting Malcolm Johnson at the Z. Coy Moore is coming. If he doesn't play well in this game, it's going to be one of those things where, I've been told after the insertion of Coy Moore into this competition at wide receiver, Malcolm Johnson stepped his game up big time. This young man has been working hard. He had to change his game a little bit. He got a little bigger. He was more of a speed guy before, so now he's added, kind of some size to his game. And I'll be just interested to see if we are winning 50-50 balls, if routes look sharp, and whether these receivers as well look like they're on the same page with the quarterback in terms of depth of route and, timing of breaks and things of that nature. So it should be fun to watch on Saturday.
Ike, also in the film review you did before we move on to talking about our defense, Chris Hill, number 98 on the defensive end there, he was able to get some pressure coming off the edge in last week's game against Morehead State. He matches up against Troxell, who moves over from left tackle to right tackle. How you expect our tackles to do in this game, and how you think they match up with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, so the guy that I pointed out specifically was number 11 here, Zabaru. But
Okay.
like on the defensive line, this is one of the things I think is going to be interesting in this game is to whether or not we can seal the edge, right? Because Mercer's going to want to try to win with speed because they're a smaller team, but they've got a ton of speed. Isaac Dowling, the middle linebacker, is a guy who's all over the place. They've just got a lot of speed on their defensive back end there. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see whether we can seal the edge and get some of those upfield things happening that would be like speed sweeps or reverses or some of the stuff that we've seen that this coaching staff likes to call. Between the tackles, I don't expect us to have a ton of trouble unless we've got protection issues, right? Where, it's supposed to be something where we're going, moving to the right, and then somebody has a false step because they didn't understand which way we were sliding. So between the tackles, I expect us to actually do really well this game. But the specific question you ask is how our tackles are going to perform. And that's going to be key if we want to push the ball down the field, which I know we're going to want to do with play action. We're going to see probably pretty early TJ under center, the stretch zone play action fake with the bootleg rollout, with some sort of tight end underneath route, and then you're going to have some sort of levels concept with that, right? Where you'll have the tight end underneath. TJ's probably going to be rolling out here to the right, so Shanker coming up underneath on the shallow, and then some sort of deep receiver cross behind that. And they usually run it out of what Mike was just talking about, the 12 personnel. They usually run that out of that, so they'll have like a backside tight end with that as well. So it's going to be important that Troxell secures that edge to make sure that TJ doesn't have a pressure coming in his face immediately off the play fake. So that's going to be the difficult thing because, again, this is a quick team. They're not going to overpower you, but they are going to try to win with speed. So that's going to be an interesting matchup for me to see how our left tackles are able to handle that and how well we're able to execute those play fakes and TJ can get the ball out quickly to somebody. I don't expect that to win with a lot of frequency until the run game gets there.